What is up, everybody? Hello and welcome to my first video of 2021. For those of you that are new, a little over a year ago I started doing MegaTen challenge runs on this channel, such as no fusion of SMT4, no buffs of Nocturne, and by far the most popular, Persona 3 and 4 with only my starting Persona. Because of this, my most requested video is, well, Persona 5 with only Arsene. Now, we will be getting around to Persona 5 at some point, but right now, I want to go back to the olden days of Persona, before the calendar, before social links, with some Persona 2 Innocent Sin. The interesting thing about the early Persona games is that this was before the wildcard was introduced. Starting with Persona 3, the developers made it so that party members can only use one Persona, while the protagonist can use any Persona he wants because he has the power of the wildcard. In Persona 1 and 2, however, every character can use multiple personas, provided their compatibility allows it. In this game, not only am I going to be handicapping the protagonist, I'm going to be doing it for the rest of the party as well. Now, as usual, before we start, let's get on with our rules. Just like with my challenges for Persona 3 and 4, I have to have my initial persona equipped at all times. I'm not allowed to change for any reason. The only exceptions are for cutscenes and scripted segments, or if the game switches them automatically and I need to change them back. Now, there is a point in the game where, depending on the decisions you've made, your personas may evolve into upgraded prime forms, which are basically upgraded forms of the original initial personas with better stats and moves. If you played this game before, you're probably wondering, will I be allowing these? Well, I suppose you could make an argument that, in a way, they're the same persona, but in Persona 2, you're not normally able to teach your personas new skills or change their affinities, and they also have different names than the originals, so to me, that makes them different personas, and they will not be allowed in this playthrough. Other than that, it's just the obvious. I have to be playing on the highest difficulty, no New Game Plus, and no external cheat devices. Now that that's out of the way, let's get on with the game. But first, a word from our sponsor. Now, let me ask you guys something. Do you like having hair? I don't know about you guys, but I like my hair. I like having hair, and I want to keep it. Unfortunately, your hair may not last forever. 2 out of 3 men on this earth will experience some form of male pattern baldness by age 35. There's no scientifically proven way to reverse hair loss, but there are ways to prevent it, which is why you should try Keeps. Generally, hair loss prevention products are difficult to get a hold of because they require in-person doctor's appointments for prescriptions, and they are very expensive. Keeps, however, not only boasts one of the best prices out there, it can easily be prescribed via an online doctor's appointment and conveniently delivered to your house every 3 months. With an affordable price and a service that's both quick and convenient, especially right now, it's easy to see why Keeps currently has over 100,000 users and more 5-star reviews than any of its competitors. Although, not even the best hair loss prevention products take effect immediately. With Keeps, it will be a good 4 to 6 months before you start seeing results, which is why you need to act as soon as possible and save as much of your hair as you can. If you visit the link down below in the description, keeps.com/gnarly right now, you will receive 50% off on your first order. Once again, that is keeps.com/gnarly down below in the description. I want to give a big thanks to Keeps for sponsoring this video, and now, let's get back to the video. Once the game starts, we see our protagonist trying to fix his motorcycle, only to find out that 2 punks from school had been messing with it. While they're confronting us, we get some kind of headache, and then the principal shows up and tells everyone to leave. Now, this is the part where I pick Tatsuya's name, and thankfully in Persona 2, you can give Tatsuya a nickname in addition to his real name, and for his real name, I decide to name him Yusuke Yuki. Why? Well, before Persona 5 came out, in the trailer where Yusuke was first shown, the lighting made him look a lot like Tatsuya, and then when we did get a better look at him, there was a running joke that he looked like the love child of Jun and Makoto, so there's that. And for his nickname, I gave him Gnarly as usual. Anyway, once the principal is done lecturing us, we get sent on a goose chase to find our counselor, and after finally talking to her, we meet our girlfriend Lisa, who hands us a letter saying that one of our classmates, Cozy, is being held hostage by a student from a rivaling school, a Kichi Mishima, who calls himself Michel. So we go to confront him, and after Lisa calls him Undiboss, he gets angry and summons his persona, Rhadamanthus, which also causes Lisa and Tatsuya to awaken to their personas as well, Eros and Vulcanus, who we will obviously be using for the rest of the game. After that, for whatever reason, we all decide to play that Joker game that everyone keeps talking about, where Joker will supposedly grant your wishes. So we play it, and to our shock, it actually works. We summon Joker, but because nobody was expecting him, they don't answer his question, and he steals the dreams of everyone except for Lisa, turning them into mindless zombies that are forgotten by everyone except for us. But not only that, Joker seems to recognize Tatsuya. We try to fight him using our personas, but he beats us and tries to get us to remember something that we can't, so he then just drops a rose and then leaves. And, you know, this is what I really love about this game. We're not even 10 minutes in, and things have already gotten really dark. But anyway, the three of us decide to team up and go after Joker, and Cozy suggests that we go to the ramen shop because there's a rumor that the owner sells weapons. We get there only to find out that the rumor was fake, but we do meet a guy named Tadashi who suggests we go visit the Kuzunoa Detective Agency. There, we learn that popular rumors are mysteriously becoming true, and we can come here to spread whatever rumors we want. This is something I really love about this game. It allows you to manipulate the price and quality of items sold at shops. We only have this one for now, but we will get more later. But anyway, we go back, buy some weapons, and after that, it's back to our school to investigate. And once we get there, we find out that it's infested with demons, and this is where we start seeing some combat. Now, just like Persona 3, 4, and 5, the combat is turn-based, but it's a little different. For one thing, there's no press turn system, so you don't have to worry about weaknesses as much. Another thing is that skills don't have their own MP cost. Instead, the persona has a base cost for all of its skills. Personas also don't level up, they instead have ranks, which unlocks new skills as they rank up, and you rank up by using the persona skills. Your characters, on the other hand, still do level up, and characters have their own stats completely independent of their persona stats. It's kind of weird, and I'm not 100% sure how it works, but I believe the actual stats become the average of yours and the personas, but like I said, I'm not 100% sure. I do know that the best way to distribute your stats in this game is to take the SMT4 approach and just dump 90% of them into magic, which in this game is dexterity. Agility, you don't even need to worry about because in this game, personas have stat bonuses that they provide on each level up. And for Vulcanus, that stat is agility. This is also where I would talk about things like how to fuse personas and persona compatibility, but due to this challenge, we won't need to worry about either of these. Though I should also mention that sometimes personas will do a thing called mutation, where during battle, a persona will randomly increase stats, learn a new skill, rank up by 2, or evolve into another persona. This has a chance to happen whenever the last enemy in an encounter is finished with a fusion spell. This is too unpredictable to rely on, and there's no way to increase the chances of it happening, but thankfully before a persona can evolve, it needs to be taken to the Velvet Room first, which we won't be doing. And yes, you did hear me right. In Persona 2, there are fusion spells, but they don't work like they do in Persona 3. In Persona 2, they require multiple users to select the right skills. You are given the option to use them from the menu, but if you also use the right combination of skills, the game will ask if you want to use them before your turn starts. These skills could be crazy overpowered, but due to this challenge, we're going to be pretty limited on which ones we can use. But anyway, the enemies in this part of the game are pretty much a joke. The best way to deal with these easy enemies is by turning off the animations and letting auto battle do the work. In fact, that's actually how I'm going to be going through most of the dungeons in this game. Eventually, we get to the principal's office where we run into Maya Amano and Yukino Mayuzumi, who are journalists working for a magazine called Coolest. After talking to them, to their surprise, more demons show up and they both summon their personas, those being Maya with an I instead of a Y, and Vesta to fight them. I'm not sure how they didn't run into any demons on the way here, given the encounter rate, but whatever, they both decide to tag along. But anyway, after this, we find out that the school emblems are cursed and we have to destroy them in order to save the school. So, we run around to every classroom and smash every clock we find because the clocks contain emblems, and once we're done, we have to go to the clock tower, where we find out Joker and the principal are in cahoots with each other. Turns out, the principal wanted to be liked by his students, which is why he worked with Joker to spread a rumor that he was a good principal. And as you'd expect, the principal is our first boss, and it's about as easy as the normal battles are. He's weak to fire, which Tatsuya specializes in, and his attacks hardly do anything. I pretty much just spam Tatsuya and Akechi's fusion spell, Flame Cut EX, and it does take a little while, but overall, an extremely easy fight.
Let's go, everybody!
He then escapes by jumping out the window. Well, that was our only lead, so it's back to investigating. We head to Peace Diner to look for Cozy, who isn't there, but we do meet Chikarin, our first rumor monger. Now, remember what I said earlier about getting more rumors to spread? Rumor mongers are the characters you get them from. Each one has a different rumor about what's sold at each shop, and you get to choose which one to spread at the detective agency. My recommendation is to always choose the option for the highest prices and highest quality, along with the lowest odds but highest quality for the sweepstakes. I should also note that these aren't actually required to beat the game, but I do recommend doing them because it's how you're going to be supplying shops with equipment. But anyway, once we're done gathering and spreading rumors, it's time to head to our next dungeon, Club Zodiac, and unfortunately we have to do it without Akechi because after hearing the rumor that the gangs at his school got a new leader, he runs ahead of the party, but even without him, it's basically the same deal as the last dungeon, just auto-battling through every encounter. At the end of the dungeon, we find Akechi getting beat up by a bunch of students, while the leader I mentioned earlier holds Cozy hostage. During this conversation, we also find out that Cozy was Akechi's grade school crush. Now, remember what I said earlier about getting your prime personas by making the right decisions? Well, this is one of them. While Akechi is getting beat up, you're given the choice to either intervene or leave him alone. The quote-unquote correct choice in this situation is to leave him alone, but because we actually don't want the prime personas, we're going to intervene. Regardless of your decision though, you have to fight the leader as a boss. And this guy actually does put up somewhat of a fight. He's not hard, but he does have some strong moves and some pretty good defenses. His persona is Reverse Rhadamanthus, and his moves are Gry, Malakwa, and Straight Slash. My normal attacks aren't doing a huge amount of damage, but neither are his, so it's not really a big deal. I pretty much handle him the same way I handled the Principal, just using my best fusion spells on him while healing with Maya every turn. After a dozen or so turns, the boss goes down.
Here goes!
We then get a cutscene where we interrogate him to find out that he was asked to do it by the student council president of the school, which brings us to our next dungeon, Kasugayama High School. While running around and auto-battling here, we get our first mutation, Lisa's persona, which learns Medea, which will definitely be helpful. After being sent on a wild goose chase to find the president, we find out that he's apparently hiding in the school's underground bomb shelter. So we go, only to find out that it was a trick to trap us inside. After running around aimlessly in circles, we get a flashback cutscene of one of our childhood friends giving us the lighter that Tatsuya pretty much uses solely to communicate with. And then try doing what someone else who apparently escaped before did, and find the exit using Yukino's camera. After that, we chase down the president to the roof and fight him as a boss, which I should put in quotes because he is a painfully easy battle. He spends most of the battle either going for his normal attack or using Magaru or Bufula, none of which are doing any significant damage, and apparently he has some ailment moves like Warcry and Sleeping Spell, although he never seems to go for them. He also has a lot of weaknesses, including weaknesses to both fire and earth. All I need to do is spam Agi with Tatsuya and Towering Inferno with Yukino, Lisa, and Akechi, while healing with Maya, and I'm doing around 170 damage each turn. He doesn't have a lot of HP either, and he goes down after about 5 or 6 turns.
Don't underestimate
You know, I'm kinda starting to get worried. Not that I'll fail the challenge, but that it'll be too easy. I mean, granted, I am still early in the game, but so far this game hasn't been the least bit challenging. I remember this game being easy, but not this easy. But anyway, after the battle, we find out that he too was working with Joker to steal ideals, and is part of a much larger organization called the Masked Circle. Their leader comes, vaporizes him, and then everyone in the gym has their ideals taken. So our only option, once again, is to look for more rumors. So we talk to the rumor mongers once again, and after talking to Chikarin, we discover a new area. We also go back to the detective agency to find out that there's a rumor that Lisa is a J-pop idol. After upgrading our equipment at Tony's shop, we head to the next dungeon, the Moo Casino. I think you all know the drill by now. Just sprint through and auto battle, though this is where enemies are kinda starting to become a problem. We're starting to encounter these mass circle members which have weaknesses and resistances based on the color of their robes, which makes auto battling a little trickier, but nothing we can't handle. Anyway, we get to the end where we don't fight a boss, but we do find out that the rumors about Lisa's friends forming an idol group and her being the third member came true, and they're playing at Giga Macho, our next dungeon. Once again, the enemies here are starting to get a little tough. They show up in greater numbers and have a lot of HP, but it's still the same as the last dungeon, just dealing with them the auto battle way. Although, this dungeon is much more confusing, and there are these cockatrices that know poison breath. Nobody in the party has Pasumudi, so once I run out of antidotes, I just have to live with the poison, because it persists outside of battle. Oh, and also Ikichi's persona mutates and learns Aquas, which I don't think I'll be using, but no harm in having it. But anyway, we do make it to the end, where once again we don't fight a boss, but Lisa does agree to join the idol group and joins them for their concert in Aoba. Now, because I don't want another repeat of what happened there with the poison, I go to Satomi Tadashi and buy a whole bunch of antidotes. Speaking of, because I also have so much money, I decide to enter the sweepstakes I mentioned earlier. The way you enter is you buy any number of magazines you want, take them to Tamaki at the detective agency, and then check back at Lisa's house after you do some progress in a dungeon. Also, you know that cat statue at the agency? Well, if you donate 10,000 yen to it, you'll get an incense set. You can only donate 100 yen at a time, so just keep tapping the X button with one hand, grab a drink with the other, and be patient. This also works for the dog statue at the Conan police station, and I recommend doing it as soon as you can, for reasons you'll find out soon enough. Now that I've got that done, it's time to head to Aoba to save Lisa at the concert hall, which we can't go directly to, so we need to go around through the parking lot, which we have to do without Lisa in our party. So we make it to the end and find out that Lisa's band members are in the mass circle and are trying to get her to betray the group. We also learn quite a bit about her backstory, like how everyone treats her differently because she's not Asian. But anyway, this brings us to another dialogue option to get the Prime Personas. The option to get the Prime Personas is to leave her alone, but again, we don't want to get the Prime Personas, so I choose to help her. Now, here is a very brief difficulty spike, because right now it's only Tatsuya and Ikichi, and neither of them have healing spells, so we have to rely on what few items we have to heal. Once we find Lisa, we also see her producer guy draining the ideals of Lisa's friends, and we have to fight him as a boss. Thankfully, Lisa joins us, meaning we now have a healer, and this boss is pretty much a loop of Tatsuya and Ikichi using Flame Cut EX, while Lisa heals with Medea. This is actually the only boss so far that's put up any real challenge, though this is mainly because we only have 3 party members. He spends most of the battle spamming Dark Mamagnera, which doesn't do much to Tatsuya, but does do a bit to Lisa and Ikichi. He even kills Ikichi about halfway into the battle, but thankfully I still have a few revival beads, and also he thankfully doesn't have much HP either, so this battle doesn't last very long.
Let's go, everybody!
You are indeed the cursed star. I didn't expect this.
Oh, and also after we defeat him, Maya and Yukino show up just in time to get a share of the experience.
I don't even get a turn? Man, what a wimp.
After this, King Leo shows up and tells us he has bombs set up all over Sumaru City, including this very concert hall. And in the concert hall is a riddle that hints at where they are. Once you step outside this room, you have 1 minute to find the riddle and get out. Just go to the room next door, search the lockers, and you'll find it. So we get out, and on the way out, we run into our crazy teacher, Miss Ideals, who spouts some nonsense about the Oracle of Maya and the Last Battalion. We then head to a place called Double Slash where we meet Yukino's friend Ellie to discuss the riddle. Now, I'm terrible at solving riddles, but I have played this game before, and I already know the place we need to go is Smile Hirosaka. Oh, and you better make sure you go here, because if you go to the wrong place, Smile Hirosaka blows up. Oh, and this game doesn't give you a second chance. You don't get a game over screen or anything like that. This game forces you to live with your decision. Well, that is, unless you just reset the game and load your last save like I did my first time playing. But anyway, once you get inside, everyone splits up to go look for the bombs, and you're by yourself. Thankfully though, it's not hard because you'll rarely encounter more than one enemy, and as you explore the dungeon, you'll regroup with your party members. Once everyone is rounded back up, we head back to the bathroom where we find out that the detonator was in the hands of the cleaning lady, so we disarm it, and then we have to fight two bosses, Belfagore and Ixquick, and we fight them in what looks like the toilet dimension. And yeah, believe it or not, these bosses are actually not total pushovers. I mean, they're not hard, but it's the most challenging any of the bosses in this game have been so far. Belfagore likes to spam Gryva and Gigantic Fist, both of which do about 40 damage to each target, and Ixquick uses Magarula and Zanma, which do about the same amount. Since you're fighting two bosses at the same time, I suggest concentrating your fire on Belfagore first, but then again, it doesn't really matter because they're both still pretty easy. Belfagore is weak to most magic, so I spam Blazing Burst with Tatsuya and Yukino, while spamming Earth Slice EX with Akechi and Lisa, and keeping my party's HP up with Maya's Medea. It doesn't really take that long before Belfagore goes down, and after that we just do the same to Ixquick, and she goes down pretty easily too.
Let's go, everybody!
After that, we get a call from Ellie who tells us the next riddle, but before we go to the next dungeon, I just remembered that we have our magazine sweepstakes to check out. They're sent to Lisa's house, which is the Silverman Manor in Rengadai. To find out whether or not we've won, we have to talk to Lisa's father, Steve Seagal. And no, I'm not kidding, that's Steve Seagal, who else could it be? And despite us entering 99 magazines, we didn't win, so what do? Enter 99 more, of course. And after that, our next destination is Gold Gym in Yumazaki, where we meet Maya's roommate, Ulala. Once we discover a bomb there, we fight our way around the gym looking for the transmitter. Once we find it, we chase a suspicious man back to the room where we met Ulala and find out that he's Ulala's ex-boyfriend. So she chases him out, and then we read the riddle, which tells us the next target is the Aerospace Museum. But first, I want to pay another visit to Mr. Seagal to check out our sweepstakes. And it looks like we lost again. Well, third time's the charm, I guess. Anyway, we go to the Aerospace Museum only to find out that we're a little late this time. The mass circle has already started burning the place down, and there are also kids here on a field trip, so it's up to us to rescue them. We go into every room checking to see if there are kids there, and eventually we find Ixquick from earlier. If you let Maya go rescue her, you'll get her prime persona, but as I keep mentioning, I don't want that, so I have Tatsuya go down instead. During which we get a flashback that involves someone burning down a shrine. After that, we go rescue some more kids, and then get to the roof where we run into King Leo, who is not only the same guy from our flashback just a moment ago, he also has a very similar sounding name to the protagonist. Well, his default name anyway. I can't imagine how they'd name him if it was based on my chosen name. Maybe something like Yosuke Yugi or something like that. But anyway, we deal with him, and we save everyone by flying away in a giant zeppelin. But King Leo stows away, and now we have to fight him as a boss, and he's extremely easy. His persona is Reverse Vulcanist, so he's immune to fire, which means Tatsuya can't hit him directly, but we can still have him assist with fusion spells. He's weak to water, so I spam Hydro Boost with Tatsuya, Lisa, and Akechi, while attacking with Yukino and healing with Maya. His attacks are also pretty weak. He has Agilao, Miragion, and Agidine, as well as his special move Dark Fiery Fury, which deals both fire damage and sword damage, but none of these skills put more than a scratch on the party. He doesn't have much HP either, and after about 6 or 7 Hydro Boosts, he goes down.
Let's go, everybody!
This ship will crash soon. Not just me. You're all gonna die.
After that, we jump off the ship into the water with all the kids, the ship crashes, and we swim safely to shore. After that, we head back to the detective agency to meet Miss Ideals once again, and after listening to her, Maya shows up, and it looks like she got some red contact lenses on the way here. Anyway, Miss Ideal goes on about an ancient army called the Last Battalion, which is a remnant of a certain regime led by a certain German chancellor who holds the power of the Spear of Longinus. She also talks about how they, along with the Masked Circle, are trying to fulfill the Oracle of Maya, which was left behind by the Pleiades, an extinct race of ancient Mayan aliens that helped mankind evolve. Sumaru City was also the battleground for an intergalactic civil war, the winners of which were the Belontiku, and their spaceship, the Shibalba, is right below us. And once the Oracle of Maya is fulfilled, mankind will become Idealians and will understand the true meaning of life. If you weren't yet convinced to play this game, you should be now. But that's not all. Lisa recalls a Masked Circle game that we supposedly used to play when we were kids. We all thought it was a dream at first, but Lisa thinks that it isn't, so we head on over to Alaya Shrine in Rengadai, where we recall that this was the same shrine where a girl died 10 years ago, and that it's all somehow connected to us. So we get a cutscene with Philemon, and he tells us to go into the cave, which is our next dungeon. And you know, I really love this dungeon. It gives us a series of flashbacks as we go through it, like how we all met when we were kids while we were all wearing Power Ranger masks, and how we all called ourselves the Masked Circle. But as for gameplay, once again, it's Auto Battle City. Tatsuyu's persona mutates to learn Dia, and Yukino's persona learns Frey, and that's actually about it. Once we get to the end, we find out that this big sis from our flashbacks, we locked her in the shrine before it burned down, and that everyone locked Tatsuya in there as well because he was against it. It's here that Maya, quote-unquote, reveals that she died in that fire and is Joker, and then attacks us. But right as she does, the real Maya shows up, and so does the real Joker. And now, as you'd expect, we have to fight the fake Maya as a boss, and holy crap, this fight is actually quite hard. Right off the bat, she goes for Diamond Dust, a heavy ice attack that has a high chance to freeze all targets, and that's exactly what it does, which prevents me from healing. She immediately follows it up with another Diamond Dust, which kills half the party. Thankfully, I have enough Bulbs of Life to revive everybody, which I do, and I'm quickly able to get the party back on its feet. She also has Poison Claw, which I don't want, Mahama and Dark Dimension, two insta-kill moves that I really don't want, and Aquadyne, which I actually do want because it doesn't have any added effects like the other moves. Most of the fight is spent with her alternating between Diamond Dust and Aquadyne, and because Yukino is weak to Diamond Dust, she does go down a few times, but I'm able to revive her shortly after. As for my strategy, well, she resists all elemental magic, but I don't have much in the way of physical attacks, so I just handle it the same way I handle the other bosses, by attacking with Blazing Burst and Earth Slice EX, while healing with Maya. Because of her resistances, this fight does take quite a long time, but eventually she does go down.
Let's go, everybody!
This can't be. You were so eager to die.
You couldn't be more wrong. Bye, Ms. Imposter.
After the fight, the real Maya tells us everything, how she was Big Sis, and how our friend June from our flashbacks is Joker. We then get a cutscene with Philemon, who tells us that June and the Masked Circle are going to be at the Caracal, and we need to go after him. This is where I would get the Prime Personas, but don't because I made the decisions to have Tatsuya do everything himself. But that's not all. Once we get outside, we find out that there are some others headed to the Caracal as well, and we get what might be the coolest cinematic cutscene in the entire series. Our next destination is Mount Katatsumori, where we get our first encounter with the last battalion. Now here you're given a choice. You can either sneak around or you can bust through. I choose to bust through, which means I have to fight the last battalion soldiers as a boss. The commander usually just attacks a few times and then runs away after a few turns, and the soldiers can be picked off pretty easily, so yeah, not a whole lot to say. After that, it's pretty much just a straightforward dungeon where you go through and deal with whatever random encounters you run into. The only enemies you need to be wary of are the snipers, because they know sharpshoot, an insta-kill gun attack with a pretty high chance to hit. Once we get to the top of the mountain, we save a group of monks from the last battalion, and then we head to the summit. On the way there, Tatsuya's persona mutates, and it tells me that I can evolve it in the Velvet Room if I want to. That's right, if you mess up in your decisions to get the prime personas, you can still get them through mutation, but like I said earlier, I'm not going to be doing that because of this challenge. I also reached 99 in dexterity with Tatsuya, so I'm now going to start investing in strength. Eventually, I get to the top of the mountain just in time to catch the end of a battle between the Mass Circle and the Knights of the Holy Lance, who we have to fight as bosses. You can choose to fight alongside one of the party members, or you can fight alone. I choose to fight alone, which means I fight against Knight number 13. So, these things all have a move called Longinus Copy, which disables your persona for about 3 or 4 turns. Due to Tatsuya's reliance on magic, this is bad, but other than that, he's not much of a threat. He does have a decently strong physical attack, MG34, but it only does about 60 damage. Later in the fight, he starts spamming Aquas, which Tatsuya is weak to, but Tatsuya's dexterity is so high, it only does 1 damage. After about the 7th or 8th turn of me spamming Agi, he goes down. After that, Yukino's friend who was here when the invasion started, unfortunately dies, which causes Yukino to awaken to her ultimate persona, Durga, which isn't her initial persona, so yeah, that's kind of a problem for this challenge. I looked this up, and apparently I forgot about the ultimate personas, which you don't actually need to do anything to get. Thankfully though, even though it automatically switches her persona to Durga, it doesn't actually replace her initial persona, so all we need to do is just switch back to Vesta, and then we can continue the challenge. So anyway, we head into the Caracal, and this is where things are starting to get kinda hard. The problem isn't so much that the enemies are easily able to kill me, it's more that they have moves that put ailments on me, which interrupts fusion spells. And considering how weak my attacks are compared to what they're supposed to be, I pretty much need fusion spells to do any decent damage. Remember what I said earlier about starting to invest in strength? Well, I changed my mind. From here on, I'm going to start investing in vitality so that I have more HP and better defenses. Anyway, I do scrape my way through the dungeon to find Yukino's friend Anna being attacked by 3 of the Longinus Knights, so we fight them as bosses. This fight is pretty similar to the last one, but now there's 3 and we have the entire party. And let me tell you, this battle is actually quite difficult. For one thing, these things all have a crap ton of HP and a wide variety of moves that cause status ailments, including Longinus Copy. They also have a move called Geisterblitz, an electric attack with a high chance to paralyze. Other than that, they all have their own elemental attacks. One has Magarula and Poisma, one has Malaquis and Illuzone, and the other has Magma... You know what? Forget it. I'm not even going to try to pronounce that anymore. I'm just going to say the Earth attack, and also Sukukaja. Anyway, like I said, they can't do a lot of damage, but they do have a lot of attacks that can and will impede your progress. Because of how frequently ailments occur, I have to use both Lisa and Maya to heal, while pretty much only attacking with Tatsuya. Thankfully, Tatsuya doesn't get hit with Longinus Copy too much, and he does do a good amount of damage compared to the others. Anyway, the first one to go down is Longinus number 9, and it takes about 10 minutes before it does. Longinus number 8 is the second, and doesn't take much longer. And finally, Longinus number 10 does take a little longer to take out, but by this time we only have one enemy to worry about, so I pretty much just auto-battle it to death with Earth Slice EX and Blazing Burst.
Let's go, everybody!
After the battle with the Knights, Yukino's shadow shows up and she stays behind to fight it herself. We continue on, but this means we still have more of the dungeon without a 5th party member. And that's going to make things a little more difficult. It doesn't help that now the enemies have even more ailment moves and one-hit kill moves. Not to mention, there are also these trap tiles that drain MP all over the floor. For, I think, the first time in this game, I'm actually really low on MP. As we struggle our way through the dungeon, we get more flashbacks, and eventually do reach the end, where we see Joker along with our shadow selves, Queen Aquarius, and some guy in sunglasses. Though, I feel like I've seen him somewhere before. Now, where have I seen him? Oh, I remember now. He's that guy from Wolfenstein.
I'm from Arizona.
But anyway, the mass circle places the crystal skulls in the rings of time. You remember those skulls that they were draining everyone's ideals with? This is what they were for. Once they do this, Sumaru City rises out of the ground and starts to float. One of the robot knights kills Queen Aquarius and steals 2 of the skulls, but then our shadows take the other skulls and run off. We now have to fight Joker as a boss.
It's been a long 10 years. Experience for yourself the pain and sorrow I endure.
Junpun, stop this! I'm alive! There's no reason for you two to fight like this!
So, Joker has 2 forms, and the first one is a total pushover. Even without Yukino, this fight is a complete breeze. All I do is spam Agi with Tatsuya and Earth Slice EX with Lisa and Akechi, and then heal with Maya. After we beat his first form, Yukino shows up, and then he turns into this angel thing, and this form is much more difficult. He leads off with Alpha Blaster, a strong light attack that deals over half to Tatsuya, Akechi, and Yukino, but what's worse is that it doesn't hit just once, it has a lingering effect that does damage every turn for 3 or 4 turns. He also has Hama on and Holy Sword, which does heavy light damage and has a 50% chance to insta-kill the entire party, and these both seem to be his favorite moves to go for. Pretty much this whole fight is just using whatever fusion spells I can with whoever is alive and constantly reviving Tatsuya, Akechi, and Yukino, because they're the ones that keep going down, and also healing with Lisa and Maya to counter the effect of his Alpha Blaster. I do have a couple of silver Manishas, which blocks 1 insta-kill attack, but once I run out, that's it. This fight is basically 15 minutes of me alternating between Blazing Burst and Flame Cut EX, depending on who is and isn't alive at the time. It is a pretty long fight, but eventually it is over, and we do beat him on our first attempt.
Let's go, everybody!
We then get a touching reunion with our friend, but then June's dad shows up and takes away his persona. We then get another cutscene with Philemon, and he tells us we need to stop the crawling chaos. Yukino then gives her persona ability to June, June awakens to his persona, Hermes, and he effectively replaces Yukino as our 5th party member. Immediately after this, the rest of the cast awakens to their ultimate personas. Just like with Yukino's awakening, there's nothing you can do to prevent this, but these don't replace the original personas, so all we have to do is just switch back to the old ones. Hermes, however, is much higher level than the personas everyone else is using because June doesn't come in until much later in the game. But an initial persona is still an initial persona, meaning I am allowed to use him, and due to his higher tier stats and skills, I have a feeling we'll be relying on him a lot. But anyway, after that cutscene, I go back to check on the sweepstakes, and I lost again. How many did I send in? Like 500? You think I'd have won at least something at this point? Well, at this point the game is almost over, so I'm just gonna give up on that. Now, normally this is where I would move on with the story, but first I want to do the Climax Theater. Yeah, this is a new feature that was added in the PSP version, and through it you can do optional side quests. The first one is called School of the Heart, which I'm actually super over-leveled for, but I'm gonna do it anyway. As for the quest itself, it's a 2-part quest, and the story revolves around Maya being sent to investigate some teacher with a supposedly perfect class, which then leads to us getting trapped in some kind of different dimension with demons crawling around. Because this is a Persona game, what else would it be? Basically, this quest involves you going around the dungeon and fighting a series of mini-bosses. There's not a lot to say because of how over-leveled I am, and the story concludes with you finding out that the supposedly perfect class was caused by the spirit of a girl who committed and the whole thing is happening because that girl's sister is using her to get revenge on the school, and it ends with her being calmed down by a teacher. It's honestly a pretty interesting story, but the dungeon just kinda sucks, especially for the second part, which is just a frustrating teleporter dungeon. But if you do play this game, I still think this quest is worth checking out. But we do have one more side quest, and thankfully for this one, we're not actually overleveled. This quest is the Persona Thief. Here, you're sent to Karukozaka High School, which is the school that SMT IF takes place in. And in this side quest, you're sent by Nameless to investigate rests with his piano or something. So we go and we meet Wayland, a musician that's supposedly a friend of Ikichi, who is also a demon summoner. And we find out he's been working under another student and using his demons to steal their personas. He summons a bunch of demons that we have to fight as mid-bosses as we go through the school. Wayland is apparently stealing personas because he's hit a slump in his musical career, and he needs to use their personas to help him write songs. We also find out that the guy he's working for, Nirasawa, is gathering personas so that the Archangel Kushiel will use them to tell him the compatibility between him and his crush. So we chase them to the rooftop, Nirasawa executes his plan, only to find out that the Archangel won't tell him his compatibility, and will instead use those personas to destroy the world. Because it wouldn't be a MegaTen game without some kind of angel trying to destroy the world at least once. Although, in this case, it isn't really an angel, it's actually just Nirasawa's persona manifesting his conspiracy theory that the government has satellites that they're going to use to irradiate the Earth. Before that happens, though, Wayland releases all the stolen personas and starts singing a song that makes the rumor vanish. And as you'd expect, Kushiel gets angry, and now we have to fight him as a boss. And this is one bulky boss. He's not hard per se, because he's only one guy and he only gets one turn, but he still has a crap ton of HP and some pretty good defenses. He's level 65, which is much higher than we are, and he also has a bunch of threatening moves like Freydyne, Megidola, Firestorm, and worst of all, Hama-on and Glamorous Dance. His magic attacks are doing over 100 damage to everyone except Tatsuya, which isn't bad because he can only move once, but Hama-on, as you should know by now, has a high chance to insta-kill everyone, and Glamorous Dance has a chance to charm the entire party. Also, without Yukino in my party anymore, I no longer have access to Blazing Burst, so I can pretty much only use one fusion spell per turn, and the only good ones I have are the cut spells with Ikichi. Kushiel is also immune to fire, so I can't do much with Tatsuya. I pretty much just have Ikichi and Lisa spam Earth Slice EX while spamming Garudyne with June, and healing with Maya, while using Tatsuya to revive whenever any of my party members go down due to Hama-on, and also healing whenever anyone gets charmed. This fight lasts about 20 minutes, and it's pretty much just attack, heal, and heal some more until he goes down. It is a very tough and close fight, but we are able to beat him on our first attempt.
Let's go, everybody! So long!
We then, well, get some pretty quick character development. Nirasawa decides to confess his love himself, and he gets rejected. Wayland overcomes his creative slump, and then we all decide to return home, and get some fourth wall breaking at the end. So this story probably isn't canon, but it was a very interesting side quest, and I wish more Persona games would do this sort of thing. But anyway, it's time to get back to the main game. You know those 4 round temples that suddenly appeared around town? Well, we have to clear them. You can do these 4 temples in any order, but I'm going to be doing the Aquarius Temple first. Now, the enemies here are mostly the same as they were in the Caracal, but the encounter rate here is much worse. The enemies here also don't provide much EXP, so if you can, I recommend bringing a Stoma along. Unfortunately, that's not an option for me, so I'm just gonna have to live with it. Anyway, at the end of this one, I have to fight 3 more of the knights, and the strategy is pretty much the same as the last fight against them, just slowly picking them off with our strongest attacks and doing whatever we can as they spam Geisterblitz, Longinus Copy, and whatever other elemental or ailment attacks they may have. It's kinda difficult at first, but once they start going down, it gets easier, and before long, we do take them all out. And once we do, we get the first Crystal Skull. The next one is going to be the Scorpio Temple, which is probably the hardest one. Not necessarily because the puzzles or enemies here are hard, but because there are more of those MP draining tiles everywhere. At the end, we meet the temple boss, Shadow Akechi.
You're gonna fight me with a persona like that? That's fine. It'll only make it easier for me to become you. This is the end, my friend.
I've had enough of your bullshit. Put a sock in it already.
You know, I'm used to characters shouting, "You're not me," before fighting their shadows. But anyway, this boss is a complete joke. I'm doing like 500 damage with Earth Slice EX and about 100 damage with Tatsuya and June every turn. He doesn't do much damage, and after like 5 or 6 turns, he goes down.
Let's go, everybody.
Uncle! You're unbelievable. But this isn't the end for me. I'll always be watching you.
Go with me. I already know you're me.
Akechi accepts his shadow, and then he vanishes. But that's not all. As you might have noticed, Cozy is here too, and check this out. We get the skull, and next up is the Leo Temple, where we fight Tatsuya's shadow. Just like Akechi's shadow, this fight is super easy. He is immune to fire, so Tatsuya can't do much, but I'm still able to do a good amount of damage to him each turn with Earth Slice EX and Garudine. This fight lasts a little bit longer, but he still goes down without any real challenge.
Let's go, everybody.
It's not me. Not bad. About what I'd expect from myself. But even if you beat me, you can't get rid of your own shadow. I'll always be there.
That's 3 skulls down, just 1 more to go. And the next one is in the Scorpio Temple, where we fight Shadow Lisa. This fight is a little harder because of her signature moves, Dark Foamy Lover and Dark Earth move, which can charm or confuse my party depending on which one she uses, but she still can't do a whole lot of damage, and also has pretty weak defenses. Not to mention, she also isn't immune to fire, so I can now use Flame Cut EX, and after a few hits from that, she bites the dust.
Let's go, everybody.
I'm sure you already know, but this isn't the end of me. Light and shadow, neither can part with the other.
I understand now. I admit it. That you have a place in my heart.
Now, what's really cool about this part is the dialogue you get after this fight. Lisa confesses her love to you, and the choice you make here actually affects who you romance at the end. I mean, it doesn't make a huge difference because there aren't social links, but fun fact, you can actually romance June here. Now, as much as I would love to do that, there's only one option I can go with. But regardless of your decision, Lisa gets the crystal skull, and now all the temples have been cleared. We get a call from Tamaki saying that Miss Ideal has been kidnapped and is being taken to the Shibalba. This is going to be the last dungeon of the game, and it is a very long one. So if you need to make any last minute preparations, now is the time. But anyway, the way you get to Shibalba is through that stone in the courtyard of our school. When you go to it at this point, there's this pillar of light that takes you to a river where the last battalion conveniently left a boat. Now this section is basically just a series of unavoidable random battles, and you're given occasional choices on which direction to go. They don't really matter much, but the fastest route is straight, then right, then left, and then after that, you're at Xibalba. So, Xibalba is a really cool dungeon, and one of my favorite final dungeons in the series, though the encounter rate is extremely high, and the enemies don't provide much EXP, so you're best off just using a Stoma if you can, which I can't. Anyway, as we go through, we get more flashbacks, and eventually reach a room with a teleporter that takes us back to Seven Sisters High. I honestly don't remember this thing being here, but if you by chance need to resupply or take care of any unfinished business in the city, now is a good time. So we continue on, and eventually get to a point where the cast estimates how close you are to the end. Here, you'll get a choice on who to agree with, and whichever one you pick will determine how much you have left. The shortest one is agree with Maya, so that's what I pick. After just a little bit more walking, we encounter the last of the Knights of the last battalion. And this fight takes forever. In addition to the normal 3 that you normally fight, I also have to fight their leader, who is much stronger and tougher than the rest of them. But regardless of whether or not he's the leader, 4 Knights means 4 Longinus copy users, which means beating them takes much longer. The problem is, at this point in the game, I'm pretty much solely relying on fusion spells to do any significant damage, because all my normal moves are so weak. But if a party member gets hit with Longinus copy, they're pretty much useless until it wears off. And Tatsuya, who is my strongest Persona user, seems to be their favorite target. So without him, I'm only doing about half the damage I normally would be. Most of the first part of the fight is just spent reviving and attacking with whoever isn't Longinus copied or has some other ailment that prevents me from attacking. Because I can't use fusion attacks, all I can do is just chip away at their HP with whatever multi-target attacks I have, the strongest of which seems to be June's Magarula. Just like the ones before, the Knights aren't strong on their own, but together they're pretty challenging and able to do a lot of damage to my party with the turns they have, especially when they keep paralyzing my party by spamming Geisterblitz. Eventually, after I think like 15 minutes, I do take one of them out, which is number 2. After that, it gets a little easier, and I decide to focus on number 3, which doesn't take much longer because it's weak to wind, and June does do a good amount of damage to them with his Magarula. The last one, besides the leader, is number 2. He's weak to water, but my only water fusion spell is Hydro Boost, which requires Tatsuya, Lisa, and Akichi, which is more trouble than it's worth, and doesn't do any more than Flame Cut or Earth Slice anyway. So I just go for Flame Cut instead, and after a few more minutes, I do take him out. And now, with them out of the way, the last one left is the leader, Longinus number 1. This thing doesn't have a weakness, and also has very high resistance to physical damage, as well as much more HP than the other 3, so beating him does take a little longer. The best I can do is hit him with Flame Cut EX, because that's the only attack that's doing any decent damage. Overall, it's a very long and tedious battle, but after much struggling, I do bring the last knight down.
Let's go, everybody! You ain't worth my time!
After that, there's still a little bit more of the dungeon left. In the next room, Maya theorizes that her thoughts are becoming real, which explains what happened earlier, and then a golden version of Akichi's dad materializes out of the wall, and we have to fight him as a boss. And there's really not much to say, it's just another painfully easy boss battle. He has a move called Yell, which deals electric damage and is guaranteed to shock for 1 turn, and then some physical moves, but none of these attacks are doing any real damage. The only move he has that's worrisome is Pressure Point, which 1-hit kills, but he doesn't land it a single time in this battle, and after just a few turns, we beat him. In the next room, we have to do the same thing with June's mom. It's pretty much the same deal, but she reflects all magic, so all we can do is pummel her with what physical attacks we have. She does have Mudun, but Maya and Akichi both block it, and since Tatsuya and Lisa aren't doing much damage anyway, I just let them die and finish the fight without them. Oh, and also June doesn't take part in this fight, but it's still super easy nonetheless. But now we get to one of the most annoying fights in the whole game, the Belontiku Aliens. These things you have to fight in this cryogenic chamber after they're manifested by Miss Ideal's thoughts. Now, these things may not look so bad on paper, they don't have a whole lot of HP, and they only have 2 moves each. But don't forget, you have to fight 5 of them at the same time, and their stats are all based on the party members, so they all have different strengths and weaknesses. But worst of all is that all of them, besides the Tatsuya one, have signature moves that hit all party members and cause ailments. The Maya one might freeze, the Lisa one might charm, the Akechi one may confuse, and the June one causes random ailments, including instant death, and it has a 100% chance to happen each time. Though, to be honest, I'd rather have a party member die than get an ailment, because if they die, I can just revive them and they'll be cured of any ailments they have. This fight is basically the same deal as the Knights, just keep attacking with what I can while crossing my fingers and praying that my entire party doesn't get affected with ailments. Only this time it's worse because there are 5 of them. Their only other move is Asteroid Bomb, which is a single target almighty attack, and they seem to go for it more than the other moves, but all it takes is one unlucky hit with just any of their other moves to ruin my strategy and make things infinitely longer. As for which order you should take them out in, it doesn't really matter. Your best bet is to just get rid of them as fast as you can, so just find the one that's weak against your strongest attack and focus on that one, and then move on to the next one. After about 10 minutes, I take out the first one. After another 5 minutes, I take out the second. Another 10 minutes later, I take out the third one, and then I take out the fourth about 3 minutes later, and finally finish the last one off about 2 minutes after that.
So long!
So we continue on, and now we are finally here. The heart of Shibalba. This is it, folks. We're finally at the end, and now it is time to face the final boss. But first, let's take one last look at our party. Thanks to all the mutations, Tatsuya's Vulcanus is over 70 in most stats, and with it comes a large boost to most of Tatsuya's other stats. Akechi's persona also has very high stats, and with him having base 99 strength, his total stats are also very high. Lisa hasn't been involved in very many fusion spells, so her persona stats still aren't very high, and Maya can't partake in any fusion spells at all, so her persona still has the same stats it did since the beginning of the game. June, on the other hand, well, his initial persona is already a mid-tier persona, so he has pretty average stats for this point in the game. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. This is our final party, and now it is time to face the final boss. We get taken to this oddly familiar looking place, and in here we come face to face with Sunglass Man, who, as you'd expect, we have to fight as a boss.
If you want answers, you must defeat me. But know that this Spear of Destiny and the power of Narlathotep are very.
You don't need to tell us twice. Okay, everyone, let's do it!
Right!
Now, Sunglass Man may not seem so bad at first. He's another one of those bosses that only has one turn and has weak attacks. His attacks are Holy Arc, which does almighty and dark damage to the party, Holy Lance, which deals physical damage and gives the target the Holy Lance ailment, Omega Cluster, which insta-kills the lowest level target, that being Lisa, and Vril Blitz, which deals electric damage and heals him by about 700. Now, these moves may seem tolerable on paper, but there is one more, Holy Grail, which makes him invincible for 2 to 3 turns, and there is no counter. You can wait for it to wear off, but there doesn't seem to be any sort of cooldown for it, so there's a chance he can just use it again and again. What's worse is that while he has Holy Grail active, he likes to go for Vril Blitz the most, so while you're completely unable to do any damage to him, he can just heal back most of the damage he took, and it is really frustrating. I should also mention that when he uses Holy Lance, it gives you the same effect as Longinus Copy, except in this case, it never wears off. Never ever. The only way you can cure the Holy Lance ailment in this situation is by letting the said party member die and reviving them. At least that's what I thought, but while I was looking through my inventory, I noticed an item called the Spirit Rib, an infinite use item with a 50% chance to cure the Holy Lance ailment. It must have been dropped after the last fight against the Knights and I didn't notice it, but once I do, I start to use it. Though, of course, this is a JRPG, so any odds of something happening in my favor are about half of what the game actually says they are. There's this one part in the fight where I try to cure it with June, and it takes like 4 or 5 tries before it works. As for my strategy, well, you should probably know by now that my strongest move is Flame Cut EX, and since he doesn't resist fire, that's exactly what I use, and it does around 600 damage to him with each hit. I also use Gardine with June, which does about 100 with each hit. Because of his Holy Grail and Vril Blitz attacks, you have to play very aggressively in this fight. If you waste any opportunity to attack him, it can make the fight infinitely longer. What sucks about this fight is that a lot of it just comes down to luck. You just have to hope and pray that he won't use Holy Grail and then spam Vril Blitz. There were times where I got him into low health, only for him to do this and then get back up again, and it just makes the fight take forever. This one, to be exact, took about 30 minutes, but thankfully I eventually did bring him down.
Let's go, everybody!
Good. Amazing.
You ain't worth my time!
Once the fight against Sunglass Man is over, he reveals who he truly is. The Crawling Chaos, Narlathotep, and that he was the mastermind behind pretty much everything that happened throughout this entire game. The rumors coming true, June becoming Joker, the last battalion, the mass circle, it was all because of him, and he was manipulating the cast throughout the entire game. As you guys know, I'm a big Narlathotep fan. I mean, it's where I got my name from, and this part really encapsulates how great a villain he is. But now, it's time for the final battle against the Great Father, Narlathotep.
It is a father's nature to be the ultimate obstacle to his child. Very well. Reach for your future with all your strength.
We'll decide our own future!
And I won't let anyone say otherwise.
Just like Sunglass Man, the Great Father may not seem so bad at first, especially when his attacks are doing damage in the single digits. But Narlathotep is actually divided into 5 parts, each of which has a ton of HP. Now, you might be thinking that the best way to handle this fight is to just spam all targeting magic skills and take out all the body parts at once. But the only one you actually need to kill in order to beat him is the head. However, the head has much more HP than the other parts, and you're going to be taking a lot of hits each turn if you don't take out the other parts. Now, the head can use Megidolon, Firestorm, and Despairing Dream, which drains your SP. None of these skills are anything to worry about, though. The left arm uses High Pressure and Reminiscence Wave, which does non-elemental damage and always puts Maya to sleep, and he uses this just about every turn, so Maya is pretty much going to be out for most of the fight. The left leg uses Hurricane and Delusion Channeling, which charms June. This is a little bit worse, but he seems to go for Hurricane much more often, so it's not too big a deal. The right leg, on the other hand, or leg or whatever, uses Fear Torrent and Master 18. Master 18 does weak physical damage to one enemy, but it hits 18 times. It's kinda inconsistent with the amount of damage it does. Sometimes it only does 2 or 3 damage with each hit, sometimes it does 20 or 30, but you cannot count on it to do less damage. If he uses this on a member and gets a good number, it will pretty much automatically kill them. The worst one, however, is the right arm. The right arm uses Earth's Anger and Seal's Raid. Seal's Raid is a Havoc attack that has a chance to insta-kill the entire party, and he goes for this a lot. As soon as the fight starts, you need to make taking out the right arm your top priority. As soon as he loses the ability to use Seal's Raid, the sooner you can move on with your day, but he will be taking out a lot of your party members before you can. The other body parts, you can take them out if you want, but personally, I don't think they're causing enough of a problem to require you to take them out. At least that's what I thought at first, but the more he pummels my party with his attacks and the more I'm struggling to heal, I begin to realize that without both Maya and Lisa as healers, I need to rely on beads. However, beads are a much more limited resource. The same goes for Bombs of Life. I thought I brought enough with me when I entered the dungeon, but this fight has already gone on much longer than I was expecting. Eventually, I get to a point where I run out of Bombs of Life and beads, and after this, there's really not much I can do. I do see that the Great Father is in the red, so I try to see if I can somewhat get back on my feet with Akechi and Tatsuya and somehow clutch the battle, but his attacks are just too much. He takes out Akechi and brings the battle down to a 1v1 between him and Tatsuya. I think that maybe I can somehow solo the battle with Tatsuya because his defense and dexterity are so high, but even with these crazy high stats, Tatsuya is brought down and I lose the battle.
My flame!
For the first time in any of my Persona challenges, I was not able to beat the final boss on my first attempt. But thankfully, the solution here is simple. I just need more healing items. So I return to Sumaru City through the teleporter and go to Satomi Tadashi, and look at that. 99 beads and 64 Bombs of Life. As SpongeBob would say, I'm ready. But that's not all. I also go to Shiraishi Ramen and order the Shiraishi Special to increase everyone's vitality by 8. Yeah, in Persona 2, you can go to restaurants and buy food that will temporarily increase your stats. I don't think I've ever used it before, so this is probably the first and last time I will ever do this in this game. But anyway, I go back through Shibalba, and before I can attempt the Great Father again, I gotta fight Sunglass Man again, but it pretty much goes the same way it did last time. Just like last time, once I get to the Great Father, I make taking out the right arm my top priority. Thankfully, I seem to get pretty lucky with Seal's Raid, and it doesn't take out a bunch of my party members every time, and I'm able to take it out relatively quickly. However, before focusing on the Great Father, I also decide to take out the right leg. For whatever reason, it seems to be doing more than it did in the last battle, to the point where it's pretty much a one-hit kill on anyone that's not either Tatsuya or Akechi, so I take it out as well. Doing it takes a while, and my allies do lose a lot of health, and go down a few times in fact, but thanks to all my items, this isn't a big deal, and I don't have to worry about running out, at least for now. Another thing I do here that I also did in the last battle, but forgot to mention, is use muscle drinks. These items will temporarily increase your max HP by 20%. I figured I would save them for a really hard battle, and I think that time is now. Once both right limbs have been taken out, this fight is much easier, and he's only able to do minimal damage to the party every turn. From here, it's pretty much just hitting him with a barrage of Flame Cut EX and Garudine, while keeping the party's HP up with Lisa and Maya whenever she's not asleep. The Great Father has much more HP than any other boss in the game, so it does take quite a long time. For the second attempt, I turn the animations off, and it still takes over 30 minutes. But with my huge supply of healing items, I am able to successfully defeat the Great Father, Narlathotep.
You've killed me. Incredible. I have witnessed the power you fostered. Well done.
And that is it, ladies and gentlemen. We have successfully defeated the final boss of Persona 2 Innocent Sin. And this is where we get the big revelation. Everything that has happened in this game, everything up until this moment, was because of a bet Philemon and Narlathotep made. They made a bet to see whether humans could overcome the contradictions in their hearts and evolve into something whole, or if they would fail and destroy themselves. And then, something happens. The In Lakech, that thing that Miss Ideals kept talking about, it wasn't just a part of the game's lore. it was the whole game's story, and it ends with the Maya Maiden's heart stopping, fulfilling the Oracle of Maya, and in turn, causes the Earth to stop rotating and destroying all life on it. But Philemon tells us that there is a way to save Maya, along with everyone else. We have to create a new timeline without our memories from this one, where none of us ever met as kids. He sends everyone away to the next timeline, but Lisa has a parting gift for us. Before we go, Philemon asks if there's anything else we want to say, so I hit him.
You know what? I'm glad we met again. Next time, you're gonna join my band, got that? It's a promise. Don't forget.
Jinyan, remember me, no matter what. I love you.
I won't forget. Not my sin, not you, not anyone. We'll meet again, and together we'll save Maya. So, I won't say goodbye, only thank you.
After saying goodbye to our friends one last time, we then get our epilogue. Our counselor asks us the same question that she did at the beginning of the game, and then we get one final cutscene. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. It is possible to beat Persona 2 Innocent Sin with only your starting personas. This was definitely a very fun challenge, though I suppose I should have learned my lesson by now, but it was much easier than I was expecting. I mean, Persona 2 Innocent Sin, I remember being easy, but not this easy. That's not to say there was no challenge at all. There were plenty of difficulty spikes toward the end that made this challenge fun, and I'm still really glad I did it. I'm glad I got to replay this awesome game. If you're a Persona fan that started with 3, 4, or 5, and you haven't played 1 or 2 yet, I cannot recommend them enough. Now, I already know what everyone's thinking. Will I be doing this for Eternal Punishment? The short answer is yes, the long answer is yes, but I'm not sure when or which version. Just like with Innocent Sin, Eternal Punishment did get a remaster on the PSP with a ton of quality of life improvements, but we never got this version in English. We did, however, still get the PS1 version of Eternal Punishment, even though we never got the PS1 version of Innocent Sin for whatever reason. Now, there is a fan translation of the PSP version in the works, but there's really no way to say when or if it'll be finished. Sadly, this is how a lot of fan translations are because they're not done for money, they're done purely out of goodwill, and I have mad respect for anybody that works on fan translations, but the unfortunate reality is that there's no way to say when it'll be done. It could be a few more months, it could be another 5 years. What I'll probably do is just wait to decide whenever I feel like starting on the video, so be sure to keep an eye out in the meantime. And that is going to be it for this video. As usual, be sure to rate, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, as usual, I want to give a huge shout out to my Ko-Fi supporters. If you enjoy my content and want to support me financially, consider leaving a donation of just $3. As always, I hope you all enjoyed, and I will see you all in the next video.
This is Gnarly, and you have entered Eternal Punishment.
One kingdom under us.
Just give up, kid.
Know your enemy before you pick a fight.
No such thing as innocent sin, and I know cause I've committed many. Correct my violence to extreme melodies, my own mind, I keep me a blink. I bring my piece to the diner, we can get busy, make it pop once I Genji. I swear this underground scene really nothing but gossip and rumors since I'm Roof City. You have forgotten me, I've been tied to another world that has already been lost. To our touched by memories, as you remember me, everything you love is gone. Multidimensional, I got this soul to the heavens above once the clock Philemon. In this world you can get killed by ideals, but it's really no secret I die for my cause.